Afi, who's putting the like Anya, the voice. But what can we hear from there? This is I realize I was confused. I don't know what that people were hearing what I'm saying. But you realize? I think this voice is very hard. Like it's bad. But then they have like they didn't prepare the room for you, so don't disturb them. Okay.
Hi, is there a moderator? Hi, Khotsokhwane, are you a moderator?
No.
Okay, I'll just wait for my colleague with whom I'm presenting. He will log in a short while. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Mimi.
Hi,
How are you?
good, how are you?
So, where's people? Looks like we're here on time.
Yeah, I'm also a bit confused. I was expecting to see a moderator, and there was one person, and they looks like they've gone.
Okay.
So
you know, come to think, I don't even know why things happen this way. All of a sudden, my what do you call this? My mouse was sticking, it wasn't working, and I don't understand this. You would. Well, I'm sure the moderator will join us any moment.
So there's supposed to be someone joining us, right?
Indeed, there's a moderator here.
Okay.
The other side.
They
should be joining any moment.
Okay, it's fine.
So today is London's hottest day.
I heard today in Europe it's Ziashiso.
So I was taking it for granted, but yeah, it's true. I'm the last person who should be complaining about the heat in London, like coming from wine. So the only thing I can do is to confirm what I will choose for you.
Yeah.
So Angela will be joining. Hi, Mizu. How are you, Mizu?
Maybe they can't talk.
Well, he's muted.
Okay.
Is he not the moderator guy? So Mizu,
no idea.
Can you share video? We talk to you. We're your good friends. We want to see you. Maybe they just started and then.
Maybe they can't share or be transparent.
Hello? Can you hear us?
Hi.
Hi.
So we basically waiting for others to log in, isn't it?
Yeah, let's give it a couple of minutes. Yeah, it's just strange that there's no moderator in the room. So let's see how the next few minutes will go. And if they don't pitch, what do you think we should do? Because I prepared my very nice talk.
No, we talked to Mr. Mizu here. Mr. Mizu
We
here
have a
is
discussion.
There's Samantha there.
And also the session right now, this
Samantha.
Zoom session is being recorded.
Yes.
So I guess they will take all the recordings and maybe they will save them onto a
Oh yeah. So I think
PC.
perhaps we can agree. Yeah, if there's no more people coming in, we can discuss with these fellows who are here.
Exactly.
Hello, Samantha.
Yeah.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Samantha. But guys, how come you're hiding? Bring your faces on the screen here. I want to see you.
No, they don't. Let's not put pressure on the audience. Let them.
Pressure. It's not even pressure. You know, we want to see
Let them
Samantha.
be.
Samantha, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Samantha is my friend, and
so?
she's here to support. Yes.
No, I see why you were quick to dash on your side. Like no pressure. I was wondering why. Now I understand.
Yeah. Sure.
So this is like 6 past. We wait up to what? Say 10 past or so?
Yeah, maybe it's at 10 past we just start discussing.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we can be talking. We want to.
Yeah.
I'm just keen to share this particular link on the group, so I can get more people. So I'll go on mute.
Also, Mizu is the moderator, right?
You know what I think? This is a hybrid situation. So there's people in Lilongwe right now. You see the screen. There's people in the room. So I think this is how it's going to work. So maybe we should just, in a couple of minutes, we should just start. Perhaps there's someone already in the room listening. You see Mizu's computer is showing something over there, and then we just take it away.
Yeah, sure, there's people there. But how come Mizu?
Hello.
Mizu, we can chat on the.
Yeah, so for the online audience, currently note that there are already participants in the room. And if it's time to start, can you kindly just carry it away so that we don't waste people's time waiting for us to start the session.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Can you also, what did he say? Mimi?
He said that he encourages us to start because there's likelihood that there's people already sitting there in the room listening to us, and because there's a schedule, we have to finish on time.
Okay.
Yeah. So I suppose we should. I'm just going to start for the sake of time and for the sake of the conference timetable. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah. Let's get on.
Okay. Okay. Good day, everyone, and thank you for, if you are listening, thank you for joining this panel. My name is Minenhle Ncube, and I will be presenting or discussing with my colleague Brian Chuma. We are both doctoral research fellows. I am a doctoral fellow at the Institute for Humanities in Africa at the University of Cape Town. And my research focuses on technologies adopted in healthcare and the nature of the internet in Southern Africa, more especially Zambia, where my field work is currently ongoing. Brian, my colleague, who can introduce himself more thoroughly, is also a doctoral fellow at the University of Sheffield and is transitioning to study at King's College London. He will also share a bit more about his presentation after I give mine. Basically, the theme of today's day 2 of this Africa Internet Governance Forum speaks about principles and policies to build AI responsibly from research to practice. And this is what our presentation is on, or our discussion. And we hope to bring forth data governance, focusing on alternatives beyond frameworks, such as the GDPR, and provide a set of provocations to consider when thinking or rethinking the internet on the African continent. So Brian's presentation will mainly focus on bottom-up data institutions, data protection regimes such as the GDPR and communal governance, while I will focus more on digital anthropology, the role of anthropology in internet research and how it will benefit further discussions for internet governance. So without further ado, I'm going to hop into my discussion, and I've titled my talk Digital Anthropology and Decolonizing the Internet Governance in Southern Africa. This is a paper I'm working on, which I would like to have published during the course of my PhD. So I would appreciate some engagement from the colleagues in the room, if any at all. So some of the thoughts on internet governance that I have is that there's an ongoing, there's a growing concern about the consistent digital divide as the levels of accessing the internet are increasing. Over half the population globally has access to the internet, with a question on how the other half might become connected. This marginalized half comprises mostly the rural population in the urban peripheries, or the poor, or women across countries with marked gender gaps. The growth or development of the internet is commonly accompanied by discourses in progress, business expansion, higher rates of employment, access to finance, transformation in education, and so forth. This implies that the internet is a pathway towards developmental goals, with the necessity to include those offline to benefit from its opportunities. When we speak about decolonizing the internet, this topic of decolonization straddles a range of challenges which concern this platform, such as access to resources and knowledge, and the nature of guiding policy or regulation frameworks. And beyond this is the issue of power and privilege in the ways knowledge is understood and the ways that the internet is designed and experienced. The subject of digital divide could also refer to content online that remains primarily skewed to serve the richer groups or Western countries. It could also refer to connectivity, inequality, the nature of accessing the internet through data bundles or even bandwidth, and so forth. There are pertinent concerns when human rights and corporate power that governs the internet are there. And there's a strong argument that a colonial internet is imposed on online populations, especially in the global South. And this colonial agenda requires a rapid connectivity of this population with access to the internet, while imposing barriers in the local use of knowledge and technology. And this is seen in fragmented infrastructure and the protection of intellectual property. So that's just a very brief overview of the idea of internet governance. And what I'm more interested in is the decolonial aspect of internet governance. And I'm going to share a little bit about the role of social science research in engaging with internet governance. Since the start of the internet, there are various voices expressing concern over our altered humanity because of this digital infrastructure, such as smartphone use, our tendencies for selfies or instant sharing on social media. The digital divide could point to how we should, the digital divide, the subject of the digital divide, we should be wary about AI, artificial intelligence replacing work, and how algorithms reduce themselves to simple data, predominantly coming from disciplines such as IT or communications. Other narratives on this topic point to the ways in which technologies can solve health issues or prevent catastrophes arising from climate change. And most of these quandaries constitute internet governance, which ensures the evolution of the internet to benefit humankind. While these discussions of the internet rely heavily on the computer science, disciplines in the social sciences such as anthropology can better understand or contribute to this field. And I'd like to refer to digital anthropology, which is a branch of anthropology and is used similarly to political anthropology to make more prominent normative and ethical arguments beyond observing and accounting for the consequences of technological change. This discussion that I'm presenting to you today draws from my ongoing doctoral ethnographic project, which explores the incorporation and experience of AI and digital technologies onto the healthcare landscape in Zambia. Focusing on one aspect of this broad topic, governance, topic of this conference, or topic of this panel, I'd like to emphasize on the significance of anthropology, which serves to examine the landscape of internet design and its use for well-being in Zambia. Furthermore, the ongoing findings of this research, of my doctoral research, will provide a valuable reflection on the state of internet governance in the studied region. At its very beginning, the anthropology discipline focused on studying small-scale societies regarded as traditional or customary, and sometimes this has been wrongly assumed as inert. These groups have been assumed as inert or never changing. But on the contrary, most observers regarded the rise of digital technologies as catalyst of change in these multiple spaces. With anthropology being tasked to study and understand the digital world, this exercise helps remove the illusion of societies initially believed to be inert. And ultimately, this grants a more balanced and rounded discipline that encapsulates the entire human experience. At the same time, rather than being merely a tool in debates over whether digital technologies have good or bad consequences, this discipline is most likely to situate new technologies within a much broader cultural and social context, thereby appreciating the inherent contradictions and complexities that emerge from the more extensive study of their use and consequence. Ethnography will show how digital technologies produce both new possibilities for digital access or lack thereof, democratization, political activism, and state oppression, creating conditions for economic activity, the commodification of things, and the decommodification of the same things simultaneously. Some of the ethnographic findings I have found during my research here in Zambia include findings. I'm seeing things such as people seeking health information online, alongside that that is sought from the clinic or the doctor's office. However, the reliance of using the internet sometimes depends on class of particular people or the ability to access the internet because of connectivity, the use of data bundles or Wi-Fi, etc. I'm also observing things like the reliance on religion or Christianity, which is a very fundamental phenomenon in this country. And this depends on one's likelihood to seek health-related information online. I'm also observing things like savvy internet users that are quickly becoming aware of the misinformation that happens online or their own vulnerability online. And as such, the internet here is presenting so much ambiguity in a lot of groups. Through the study of digital landscapes, anthropology remains its holistic methodology rather than being merely a tool on debates over the benefits or downsides of digital technologies. and thus it is likely to contextualize new technologies within a broader cultural and social context. Ethnography is here to show how our digital technologies produce new possibilities for increased knowledge access on healthcare, for example, which is limited to some populations. Anthropology is especially relevant at addressing the dearth of the social science engagement on the internet in Southern Africa, whose body of scholarship is overwhelmingly from developed countries. Furthermore, the discipline provides a valuable consideration and contribution towards internet governance in our region. I'd like to also point to more infrastructural challenges that I am observing with respect to managing the internet. And these include things like physical investment in ensuring that connectivity remains or is improved. Things like optical fiber networks, where the countries are investing in sufficient optical fiber networks. The data centers in question. I know there's Zambia has been developing their data center through their Smart Zambia initiative to ensure better transfer of data through the cables, etc. And I think this is something that countries need to question, how their data centers are working or are being supported. The cell towers as well, which determine connectivity for various people across the spaces. Although I'm not an IT expert, these are I think this is something that as thinkers of technology, we need to consider with respect to building a better internet. And I'd like to speak more about the nature of governance, or a more contextualized form of governance, but this is something I think Brian would be more keen to talk about, and I'll leave the rest of the conversation to him, and then further on we can have questions and more engagement. Brian?
Right. Okay. I thought there's a moderator from IGF here. Mizu, am I right? Hello? Is there someone from IGF here that...
I think just go ahead and say and talk, and then we can, I'm sure we can, yeah.
Yeah. I think I was very keen on someone from IGF because in the preliminary stages of organizing, we were very, very interested in engaging with the audience and hearing about developments in different parts of Africa, what is happening in terms of the discussion that we want to have. And my hope is that there was going to be someone at least who facilitates some interaction with the people that are there physically. There isn't any, is there? Okay, fine. So we'll have to adjust to some extent. So what I was going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, which is linked to the anthropology that my colleague was discussing about, is the issue of data governance beyond data protection. How do we govern data for development? There is so much talk about data as a resource, with analogies of data to oil. And I've heard this kind of thing being dismissed by very serious people. And I'm not very sure whether it's, is an appropriate analogy to make, but well, what I just wanted to emphasize is that we want to have a discussion around data as a resource for development, and how, as a continent, we then govern this data to make it available for development. If you just scan around academic literature, both academic and policy, you realize that there's so much investment, policy investment at the level of government and civic society in terms of developments, in terms of ideas, in terms of institutions around data protection, as a form of data governance and so much investment in the GDPR regime. And we really wanted to engage and find out whether is the GDPR a sufficient framework? Do we maximize the value of data when we use the GDPR regime for governing our data resources? What is there beyond the GDPR that we have? We want to look at developments in other parts of the world, in India, in Europe, in the Americas, and see exactly how they are managing their data resources, and we compare with our approach in Africa here. We identify gaps and discuss collectively. But if it's going to be a one-way kind of discussion, well, you'll probably hear from me. I'm not sure exactly how we're then going to exchange. But let me just start on the issue of data. We have a very established practice in Africa here. In most of the discussion, when we talk about data, we tend to narrow to personal data. And then at the policy level, we then find a lot of relevancy in the GDPR regime in terms of governing. So I just want to make it clear there that the kind of data that I'm talking about, I am going beyond personal data to involve any sort of text, numeric, video, graphic. I've just forgotten the other type of data. Be there, okay, pictures as well. That can be used for business innovations. All sort of data that can be personal or non-personal. It can also be, anonymized or de-anonymized. It can also relate to individuals or communities as a whole. This data, this relevance being in innovations that produce good, that generate goods and services that are relevant for economic development. So I am talking about data as a resource for the kind of apps that we use. I know that most of you are well traveled here, and this sort of thing is probably happening in Africa. Yes, it is. It would have been very nice to hear exactly from the audience here the sort of data innovations that they've come across in. I'll just give you an example. My early interaction with this innovation. There's a time ago, I was a parliamentarian in Zimbabwe, and I had this habit of visiting Asia. There were no visas there, so it was very easy to drop in and out. So the first time I went to Hong Kong, I had my smartphone there. Well, I went in and then I went out, but there were just about certain traits or traces that manifested later on and they were data related. The next time I came, I think it was about a year or two, I sat on some computer at an airport in Hong Kong, a particular terminal. Well, I had noticed that it was the same terminal because it was the same flight that I had been earlier on. But when I sat on the phone, there was something like, "Welcome, Mr. Brian. You were here on such a date a couple of years back," and all that. It was a bit of a curious thing. On my second visit, also when I was just walking around in town, I noticed that my phone was kind of connected to the environment. So there were things like, there is a McDonald's just around the corner there. You went to a shop around such a corner there, 300 meters away from here, you were such a shop a couple of years back and all that. So there are those kind of developments. I've just given you like one example at the nascent stages, but of course, of late, there are innovations in transport, there are innovations in medicine, there are innovations in water and sanitation and other fields. I would have loved to hear, or if it's possible right now, if someone can just speak to me there, where else in, not really where else, but which other areas do we have this kind of innovations in Africa, the data innovations, this data revolution that I'm talking about? Is it possible that someone can talk there and I can hear them? Or those that are online, maybe they can just send on the chat there. I've just given you one example. There are many of these applications, but well, this is the revolution that I'm talking about. Okay, thank you so much. Someone is saying that for the interaction in the room, they will pass the mic. So I just want to hear about the kind of applications that we have going on that are based on data, the business innovations, the kind of innovations that we have going in Africa in the different areas. Just any volunteer, please, to tell us about what is happening in their area. Okay, someone says when
someone in the
restaurants,
yeah.
some remember my order when I do takeaways online. That's a data application.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just see another one in a different area? I'm sure there's Uber. I'm sure there's Uber somewhere.
Yeah. Just an example. You know, here people buy order second-hand vehicles from Japan online. So you find that you might just do a simple search that you want a particular car or whatever. And then all of a sudden, in every web page you access, you are bombarded with the adverts, okay, from different car manufacturers. So that's another aspect in which kind of somebody is tracking you behind the scenes, and then try to recommend one or two things, which sometimes you might not necessarily need. Thank you.
Okay, maybe we can have one more example in another different area. I mean, there are many, I know. Just one from a volunteer, how we interact with data, some kind of business innovations that is based on data that you have, interacted with.
I know one technology with respect to fintech. I'm not sure whether it's relevant, but it keeps coming to my mind, and it's an innovation that is coming from Zimbabwe. They're using blockchain technology to solve some peer-to-peer transactions. And my question is whether that particular application might be using some form of data or transmission of data to improve its service. I'm not sure. I still have questions with respect to the use of a blockchain application. And yeah, it's something something that was on my mind, and I thought I'd share it. It might not be answering the question, but it's an interesting technology nonetheless.
Yeah, well, I'm aware blockchain tends to be integrated with other, data applications, and they come in that way. But there are so many data applications in the domain of public service delivery by governments and local governments and central governments. Those are the kinds that I was interested in to hear from
voting.
From the team. Particularly things like water, sanitation. There are so many people here who are coming from the NGOs, and there are programs on WASH that are all over in Africa. And I'm sure some of them, they innovate around data. I'm also aware of open street maps, and that they collect data, to deal with disasters and all that. There are quite pretty many applications. But fellows, what I'm actually talking about here is things that I believe we interact with on a day-to-day basis. If not in our local communities, around as we travel in the world. Most of the people around here, there are people in civic society, people in academia, and people in government. You do a lot of travels. So I just wanted us to discuss and really open up to this issue, to open up and review the different applications that are of relevance to our governance of data, so we can weigh whether the data protection regime that we are using as a tool for governing that data really suffices for purposes of development. Okay, perhaps we should move forward if there's no other, but I was just going to give you a couple of examples in my domain. I am from Zimbabwe. It's not an exaggeration that there's not so much in terms of innovations around data, but my experience is through travel Of late, I'm based in the UK here, where I am studying, doing research on a PhD. And let me just give you an example in terms of transport, right? In the UK here, when you have your phone, you link to just about every service. You don't even need to go to a shop and start really doing the physical things that we do. You can actually shop right from the convenience of your house using your phone. That's a data application. You can interact with your metro, the rail station, the rail service, the commute one that goes into town and back if you're going to work. On a real-time basis, you want to know what time the rail train is coming, the metro train is coming, whether it's delayed, if there's an accident. There are also some other apps when you are driving along in town. They will tell you that, no. I think, what do they call it? Google, the ordinary Google Map, the ordinary TomTom, the one that actually routes you. You can use it for directions that, okay, you're going to a particular point. You can use that application, it directs you around. It will actually tell you that, no, this road that you want to favor, there's an accident there, or there's a police roadblock, or there's some inconvenience. It actually, using algorithms, the system would calculate and then use the least cost way that you can take to get to point A or B. There are also applications in areas like medicine for medical diagnostics and all that. There are applications also in other domains like managing natural resources, our forest, our environment, and all that. So there are these applications here that are happening in the rest of the world. And I also want to believe that these things are happening in Africa. I'm just wondering why we are not just discussing about them openly. But what I was going to then ask is that these applications, what they then need, this particular need when we have to use data for developmental purposes, we need more data. We need more data to train the algorithms. This is artificial intelligence that run those data innovations. We don't need less, just as a premise of what is happening in those countries where they use these systems. Now, we have the GDPR system, which is based on privacy and individualism and protection of data. It's a logic which is against sharing, right? So we have a GDPR that is more leaned towards data protection. It promotes data fragmentation, the building of silos. Those that have data, they have to manage it in a way that it does not get to the next person or share. Then there are these narrow sharing arrangements that are in place. Then we have a particular need for data that requires collaboration, that requires sharing, that emphasizes access for developmental purposes. What I wanted to engage with you at that level is that I wanted us really to engage on the issue of this data protection, which is founded on individualism, which is founded on hoarding and fragmentation, which promotes fragmentation of data. How does it assist us here as a tool for managing data for developmental purposes? Are there any other systems that we can use or that we can adopt beyond this data protection that would make data more freely available in a way that protects those data rights, but for developmental purposes? So the question that I really want us to focus on is, what other mechanisms beyond data protection can we use in Africa, or can we develop in Africa here, to make data available for business innovations that generate goods and services for economic growth, while at the same time protecting the rights and interests of individuals and communities who own that data? I realize that on the second rank, we're going back to the issue of data protection, but the emphasis here is on the issue of governing data in such a way that more and more of data it becomes available for developmental purposes. And we need more and more of that data for training of algorithms that run those data innovations. Are we together, ladies and gentlemen? On that particular issue that I raised, I see a head shaking there. I just wanted to share experiences of what is happening in other countries. While, ladies and gentlemen, in Africa, we're emphasizing data protection. In the area of its birth, the GDPR, the GDPR has gone extensive revision. Here in the UK, there were actually recently consultations that were going on, and it was overhauled to the extent that it's totally changed. There's even a debate on whether it's still the same thing as the GDPR or is the GDPR or is totally another framework. So they have recast it, I'm talking about the UK here, in such a manner that the framework that they are developing here, emphasizing more of data sharing, emphasizing more of data collaboration, emphasizes more of data access, linking the technical developers, those who need the data, and the suppliers. So there's development of these institutions that facilitate that sort of connection. They are even building laws, a policy framework that conduces to civic society voluntarily setting up those kind of institutions that would then facilitate that sharing of data. Let me just give you an example of what is going on in India. India is also another area around the world which has questioned the centrality of the GDPR in dealing with data, in using the GDPR and data protection as a governance framework in an environment where more and more data resources are needed for developmental purposes. So there's a general understanding that the GDPR limits the supply of data that is needed for development. So there's been a debate here, emerging models on how we can recast our data governance beyond data protection to make data available for those kind of innovations. Let me just discuss a couple here. We have the data sharing pools, we have data cooperatives, we have public data trust, we have personal data sovereignty models. The long and the short of these schemes is that they emphasize the pooling of data from different sources and governing it, not at the behest of individuals, but to protect communal interest. Those are generic models that are being developed by academics, but there are particular ones that then focus specifically at a practical level on developing institutions that steward data for particular purposes in particular domains. So I'll just give an example of data trust. So a data trust is not so much different from the trust that we know, the legal one, but it is an offshoot from that. What happens with this institution is that it can be a private, it can be by government, or a combination of the two. But this institution, they then collect or hold data on behalf of individuals and whole communities. On the other end, they make this data available to developers, to innovators, and these are actually young people in colleges and all that. So they develop a regime of rights that ensures that when they are, whoever has got access to that data, whoever shares in that data, whoever collaborates in that pool, does not violate the rights of the individuals or communities who contribute to that data. They also shepherd it in such a way that whatever benefits are pulled from that data, they also benefit not just those who develop those business innovations, but they also benefit the owners and the owners of that data. The emphasis here, ladies and gentlemen, is on governing data for public benefits. So what I'm saying is that under the GDPR, you can have a company like Facebook, for example, or Google, developing massive techniques and massive tools for pulling data, large sums of data, but that data is only available to Facebook, it is only available to Google, and it is only Google that can use it for their own business innovations. And because they've got a monopoly in that sort of thing, and the GDPR protects that sort of monopoly status, they tend to have an edge. And the products that they develop, even if they also benefit society, primarily they are for the benefit of that company, and they develop large in profits, and we have the kind of problems that we have. This logic that I speak of here is about having institutions that make that data available, not just to Google, but or to whoever is owning the data or in whose custody that data is. It is shared and made available to several innovators from the community. And the innovations are those that benefit society generally beyond the individuals themselves. Even governments can tap from that and use that data for developmental purposes. In Africa, I just want to give an example, but I was just going to ask if there are any such institutions in local areas where people are from here, from different countries here, if there are any such institutions that they've come across that hold data on behalf of individuals and also make it available for developmental purposes. In the manner that I've just discussed here. Is there anyone who has come across such an institution in their particular area? I would really be keen to hear about this. Hello. I am aware of the Lacuna Fund. The Lacuna Fund is an NGO, non-profit based in Canada. So what they have done is to sponsor calls in which they invite organized entities or even individuals to bid, and they avail financial resources. People in Africa right there, they then collect data for different domains. There was a call for language. I almost participated in that, I remember. I withdrew at some point. There was also a call for data in the agricultural domain. There was also a call for data in the climate domain. So they collect that data, but they make sure that it's people from Africa who are involved in collecting that data. They then format and keep that data in a manner that it is available for use by developers right there in Africa. This is an area of keen interest. When artificial intelligence technology developers use data, they tend to use data for training their algorithms. There are serious implications when you use data, say, gathered in Europe to train algorithms that you then apply in Africa. This is when you have some machines not able to recognize a human face because they were trained that the human on data that emphasized a sharp-pointed nose, you know, the Caucasian people, when most of us black folks like me here have got flat nose. So if you use a machine that was trained on pictures, which is data that were collected in Europe with people with sharp nose or sharp foreheads, it do not indicate as a human being if you use that machine in Africa there. And we have those problems of machines depicting a human being as a gorilla or a chimpanzee. I think I've seen in newspapers here and there. So this issue of having data from right in Africa here, that is then made available publicly for those that train algorithms, it's really a serious issue that we need as the policy stakeholders in this domain to think about and come up with ways on how our data can then be managed to close that gap. But I just wanted to find out, beyond the Lacuna, are there any other institutions that anyone is aware of here who are involved in this kind of thing with data in Africa?
I'm curious about the ODI, the Open Data Institute, and whether it has anything similar to Lacuna. What is the objective of ODI, the Open Data Institute?
Okay, so what I was going to say on that particular issue is that the ODI actually runs a specialist program that trains and provides mentorship on how to develop and manage a data institution, a bottom-up data institution, as they call it. So it's a think tank with a vast knowledge on this kind of things. And most of the data institutions that have been developed, especially in the UK and also in the Americas and India, they've had partnerships with quite several organizations where they do this kind of institutions. And they are keen that this same model is exported to the global south. So the ODI invests in this sort of domain. And I was just hoping that through this discussion here, we might have some starting point and identify individuals who probably we could use as a starting point in this.
Brian, just looking at the time, we have 10 more minutes, and I think we should start wrapping up our talk.
Brian, just a quick one, Brian.
Yes.
I don't know if I understood you very well. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I'm hearing you clearly.
This is Vincent from Malawi. So I've got 2 examples. I don't know if they fit your criteria. I think the first example is the UN PACE Global. I think they've been collecting data on SDGs and making it available. I think they've got, they're running like a distributed approach, and they've got, I think 4 or 5 places around the world, one of which is in Uganda, Kampala. More like data hubs where people can access that. It's accessible online, but it's also having like distributed systems like those. So that's the first example that came to mind, as some sort of data warehousing. And then the second example that also came to mind is something in South Africa called Akiba Digital. Of course, they're not giving people access to that data, but for them, they're using data maybe to determine who gets more like SMEs, who gets a loan, who gets access to, they're kind of using the data and selling it to bigger investors, kind of to make decisions on who gets to be supported at the end of the day. So it's more like a business model around data, but without necessarily releasing the data, but more of what they've analyzed from the data. So I don't know if that fits your description of new models and in terms of data governance and all that.
Okay, thank you so much, Vincent. What was the first example that you gave?
UN PACE Global.
UN PACE, PACE is in PACE.
PACE, PULSE.
PACE Global, okay.
Yeah, I think it's also called data for SDGs, something like that.
Data for SDGs.
Oh yeah, thank you so much.
PACE Global.
So, yeah, there's the other gentleman with the mic.
Thank you so much. An interesting conversation. By the way, I'm Bennett Kankuzi from Malawi University of Science and Technology. You are raising a very, both of you speakers, you are raising very important issues pertaining to data governance. I have a concern though, that much as we want to have data for development, I do believe that we still have to protect privacy. In our African context, we believe in communalism, okay? That's the order of the day. But then for one to participate in any community endeavor, they have to give consent. So in this particular case, we would not be comfortable, okay, to have somebody harvest my data, for example, and then use that data to sell it somewhere without actually my knowledge. And the Africans now, we have been victims of that. And that links to the issue of decolonization, okay, which I think the first speaker talked about. How do we decolonize technology? And one aspect is the on protection of data. If you check around, you would see that the most data about Africans resides outside Africa. So you have Google, Facebook, all collecting data about Africans without their consent. I gave that example in which you do a simple Google search about, let's say, a car, and then Google immediately starts recommending adverts all over without your what? Without your consent. And this is why, like in Europe, you have the GDPR, which tries to protect at least against that mishandling of personal data. So I agree with your point that we need to look at new models on how we can share data for development, yes, but let's not also forget the importance of personal data protection, okay? We still have to respect people whose data is being used elsewhere. If anything, actually, I would say that our African countries have not been so active in protecting data of their citizens. This is why you have, let's say, for example, people coming to Africa, people coming, let's say, to Malawi, they are doing research, health research. And what do? They own the data. They come from Europe, they conduct the research here, and then they own data about Malawians. They own data about Africans. I do believe that let's strike a balance if we have to progress. Let's not just go for, yes, development like that, but let's also protect the rights of individuals. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. So thank you so much for that intervention. I was just going to say briefly. So the data institutions paradigm does not do away with data protection and the privacy issues. They are inbuilt. So we have that data institutions managing those data privacy, the data protection issues on behalf of the individuals and the community beyond the individuals, which is not something available within the GDPR. But more importantly, just to summarize my answer, that data sharing and the access and the collaboration which is required for access to data by business innovations is done within a framework in which those rights are protected. So this new paradigm that I'm discussing about here is very consistent with the protection of privacy and protection of data. It doesn't do away with that. I think what it does, it just shifts responsibility. So here you have a central body where as a community, where as individuals, we then vest our responsibilities for data protection. But we are protecting data with an eye to greater developmental ends. We want to make data more available. Well, actually, it's more about managing data to provide for problems that are inherent in access, that are inherent in sharing, that are inherent in collaborating around the data. So those concerns are actually taken care of within that framework. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. And also, I just would like to add what I think is important when we speak about data governance is that I think in a lot of across our African landscape, there's many instances where the data is there. And you mentioned earlier that we need more data. There are instances where the data is there, whether it's healthcare data, whether it's fintech related data. The issue is that the data does not, it's in a format that is not usable for data science or for the translation of this data for AI related practices. For example, if you go to a government hospital, you might find that they have tons of files with respect to medical records, which are useful. All of that stuff is useful to create an algorithm that might support patient-related activities, or doctor-to-doctor activities, or patient-to-doctor activities. So if there is no system in place to use that data or to govern that data, to translate it into the language usable by data science, then we remain with the assumption that there isn't data when the data is there, and it's just not in the language or in the format that is usable. So I think I honestly think that there has to be more political will among our leadership. I strongly think that the leadership we have in a lot of countries, they're very, unfortunately, they're very behind with what's happening in technology. Some leadership people are very old as well, and we need a set of leaders that is more knowledgeable of how these things might work. And the people are there. There's just no political will for the translation of this to support the fourth industrial revolution. I think that is what I wanted to emphasize.
I'm just saying that we're left with 1 minute.
So maybe we should, in closing, we should thank the IGF for giving us this platform to discuss the importance of governance, what governance might be, what it could look like, the internet, the state of the internet. I personally want to thank my colleague who joined us. Unfortunately, our other panelists could not be there. I think there were about 5 of us. This is just a fraction of our team, but we're so grateful for everyone who listened in Malawi and wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I was also going to say, we will send it through the moderator. Okay, there's a hand there. Is that a hand, Samantha?
I think it's just a round of applause.
Ah, okay, I see. So what I was going to say is that we will send the information through the moderator around this issue of data institutions and the emerging paradigm, and also how people, especially civic society, those who want to invest in this area in terms of programming and partnering, how they can access programs like the one offered by the ODI here. I'll send information through the moderator. I'm sure there's a mailing list or something. You will circulate it to everyone. He or she, I'm not even sure who it is. Yeah.
Or they.
Thank you very much. Or they. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. I think we can, end the session.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.